Thanks, Chef Jeremy Austin, for being with us.
Cheers.
So let's start with you telling us a bit about yourself and your background, your relationship with food as a kid.
Yeah, my name is Jeremy. I'm the chef and owner of The Pine in Creemore. I own it with my wife. We've owned it now for about 5 years. Been kind of cooking together for about 23 years, actually, believe it or not, because I look so young. But yeah, 23 years. Started in Thornbury, Ontario. Didn't really have too much of like a food culture growing up. It was kind of was a very picky eater. So the first job I ever had was in a kitchen, and when I kind of started eating food and seeing how things were prepared, I actually was like a little bit less afraid of food at that time, and that's what I would say really kind of drew me to cooking in general. Yeah.
And how did you get your training or more professional experience?
So I went to George Brown, and I did the culinary chef training course there, and then I did another postgraduate course where it was about 2 years, and then the other half of the course was in Italy, in Colorno. Yeah.
Nice.
At Alma.
And then how did you transition into more professional cooking?
So at that point, I was actually already cooking a little bit, and I decided to kind of go back to school to kind of get that on my resume, maybe be taken a little bit more seriously. But from after I graduated from school, I moved to Wuxi, just a little town outside of Shanghai. I was a chef there at a hotel called Shuyu. And then it was kind of like surrounded around tea culture, but basically doing Italian cuisine, because up until that point I'd already been doing a lot of Italian restaurants, and yeah.
Nice. And do you find yourself particularly attracted to certain things in Chinese food or Italian food, or
yeah,
how
I
do you
mean,
see yourself?
People kind of ask me like why I stick to these two things, and really for me to be as creative as possible. I find that we stick to my story, and that's just really how I grew up, like as a chef, kind of, with Italian background, where you kind of utilize where you are, and pretty simple flavor profiles, like, you don't want to go much more than 3, it just overwhelms people, and there you can find like the highest level of quality. And then with the Chinese idea intertwined with what we do, was kind of like, I found a lot of similarities between the two different cuisines. At a glance, they wouldn't seem that way, but when you kind of pick them apart and kind of separate them all, they are rather simple, and like they make a lot of sense together if you do it in a certain way. I mean, obviously, Chinese food is never like really based off of tasting menus. It's more like shared around a lazy Susan. But if you break those dishes apart individually and you eat them individually, you can kind of make an Italian dish, a Chinese dish, and a Chinese dish, and an Italian dish. And so when we were like focusing on our menu, we really try and have the idea of having a Chinese dish, but like making it more Italian by using what we have here. And that's like number one, because that's in Italian cuisine is number one, is where you are. Yeah.
Right. So in terms of, you were talking about how you create your dishes. So how do you put together, could be dishes, could be the entire menu from start to finish?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's like a long drawn out process of how we're trying to make the entire menu flow. We don't necessarily like take one dish out and we're like, yeah, that's the dish is balanced, the dish is everything we want it to be. And that could be great if they only eat that dish. That's it. But if you put it up against 7 other dishes before it and 10 dishes behind it, that dish no longer has the same weight as if you just ate it by itself. So when we're trying things, we can't necessarily just try the dish itself. We kind of try multiple dishes at once. So it's not like, and we see like, in the menu, are we going like super 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 rich, and then do we need to refresh them a little bit and like bring them back to something that's like maybe not as rich? Because like that's, in my opinion, the like highest level of cuisine is richness, because it's just like all the best things. You have caviar, you have foie gras, you have Kobe beef. All of those things are like really rich, umami, and if you go all that way the entire time for 25 things, they're gonna die. Everyone's gonna die. So you have to kind of like bring them back and forth a little bit, and then when you do that, you find that those rich dishes actually hit even harder. They're like even more rich. They can handle it. They're not like I want this to end, because you don't really want them to feel that way, right? Like if you're watching a movie and you just want it to end the whole time you're watching it, that's not really the point. So for us, we want the guest and the diner to not feel overwhelmed and want to continue the dining experience and not want it to end. At the end of the dish, at the end of the menu, you want them to want to come back, right? Yeah.
That's a good point. When I just came back from Paris, I went to restaurant 80.
Yeah. Oh, it's sick.
Yeah, and they actually had because I was actually commenting on one of the dishes seemed kind of flat to me.
Sure.
And they were kind of explaining exactly what you were saying.
There's a purpose to it.
Yeah, because they're kind of making sure that it's not just like everything is like really high.
Yeah.
Or everything is just kind of.
Absolutely, and you have to like kind of bring them back down, and it's like when someone is exactly, and it's like when you voice your opinion on something, it's important because then someone can explain why that's like that, and then they're like, and then you're like, oh, that makes a ton of sense, right? And we find also, like, obviously this is one of your questions, but we find that in service we are like responsible for maybe 50% of someone's enjoyment, and the other 50% is up to the guests, completely up to the guests. And I say 50 because it's like, if you're going to be on your phone the entire time, you're not going to enjoy this, like 100%. I cannot give you enough things to stimulate you enough to help you enjoy this experience. If you're not going to sit there and watch the room, like just watching the room and the choreography that goes on is one of the most beautiful things you can ever really witness. And if a guest engages like what you just said, where you just like ask a question and then someone's more than happy to answer your question, and it like almost makes your experience better because you now understand it a little bit more and you understand the thought process of everything. But without that, and you can't just necessarily say like in the case that you just mentioned, it's like you can't come in and be like, hey, this dish is like not that great, but it's like as like a position on the menu, it's important because of the dish before it and the dish after it. And you can't necessarily say like this is just like a meh, right? Because you can't open with that. But how do you explain to the diner that there's a purpose of this dish to do exactly what it just did, you know? But like I said before, like if you're not engaging with the staff, you don't get to see everything that goes on, which is unfortunate in my opinion.
Everyone has their own experience.
Exactly, and if you're not there to actually experience it or take advantage of the people that are like putting the show on, you just definitely want to enjoy it as much, right? For sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like obviously too, like we're lucky because we have a kitchen that's open and I can see every table. I can see if they're enjoying it and I can see if they're not enjoying it. And I can see if a table is like quiet. You can see right off the bat, you're like, okay, they're a little bit nervous because this is a nerve-wracking thing. They've maybe never had a tasting menu in their life. They don't know how to sit. They don't know how to use the cutlery. And then there's some people that are really confident in that scenario. And then you're like, how much information do they want me to give them? And so you can, every diner we treat differently. So if they are nervous, we come in right away with humor, because that's like something that allows people to feel at ease. So we bring humor in, then they like laugh a bit, chill out a bit, and then they realize that this experience that they thought was supposed to be this like super serious, like I'm not even allowed to cough, I shouldn't be talking to my patron, isn't like that at all. It's like you should be talking to your patron, obviously, and you should be just enjoying the music, enjoying the staff, enjoying everything that happens around you. Yeah.
Cool. And so we were talking about Chinese food. Obviously, it's a lot of different places and different regions.
Sure.
And one of the dishes I remember still is the Hong Kong toast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you pick your regions or pick your dishes to incorporate?
A lot of the time, like, you start with what's the best thing you've ever had, right? Because that's really going to be where you want to end up anyways. So you want to start there. And sometimes you get lucky and you end up there by fluke, but you want to start with what is like your favorite thing about a place and what is delicious, right? And Hong Kong French toast is easy for me, because when you see that dish, you're like, this is a dish from my home as well. And now how did you come up with something completely different that nobody else thought of? That, right? And that kind of fusion of like what East meets West, but now is West, right? And when we think about our menu, it's like, yes, we take inspiration from all of these places, even in China, but are we creating something completely different, like what they did in Hong Kong? And that's like what I'm like super interested in, because then I get to be independent in my thinking and I get to create whatever I want, and there's really an endless opportunity to do that. But that was like Hong Kong in general was one of the things that I saw, where it's like you have the West and the East combining into one, just through like, let's cook things in a wok that are like normal Western dishes, and then you create something different because cooking in a wok is completely different than cooking in a frying pan. And like even in Macau, you have the same idea where it's like Portuguese food in a wok. It's like, and so I'm like, why can't you do Italian food in Creemore, Ontario, using what we have already here to make Chinese food? Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's kind of like the entire philosophy of the restaurant is that one dish. Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit.
Sure.
When you first started.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys started during COVID, which is, I don't know if anyone would do that.
Yeah, I mean, nobody should do that, for sure, but yeah.
So what was that period like? Why did you start off during that period and all that goes
I mean,
behind
yeah, we obviously, like, we didn't plan for COVID to happen. We came back just before the pandemic started from China, and we knew that we wanted to open a restaurant. And so we kind of opened smack dab in the middle, but we had started renovations on the space, and obviously we get these on the news. It's like, hey, the world's ending and you probably shouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. And so you're like, okay, well, how do we get rid of this restaurant space? And the answer was like, no idea. Like, is it easier to just go through with it? And that was really what happened. Was in order to finish, we're like, we might as well just do this entire thing, get to the end, and then see what we did. Because at that point we had like destroyed the entire building, and they were like, pandemic, and we didn't even know if we were allowed to renovate. We didn't even know anything. Nobody was like really guiding us through the entire thing. It was just kind of like figuring everything out slowly over a period of time. And during COVID too, like, it was kind of almost the perfect time to have a 12-seat restaurant, because they were only allowing 12 people or 10 people in a restaurant anyways. So everyone who was like thinking we were crazy to do what we were doing, we actually ended up being kind of like a beacon, and everyone was like, oh, maybe we should do a tasting menu as well, so we can kind of like have 10 people in the restaurant and then flip that, and we get more money for each guest, and it's just like ends up being a good idea. But obviously, it was very scary. It was definitely scary. But one other thing about COVID that kind of helped us out was that everyone from Toronto actually had just come up and stayed at their cottages for the full 2 years. So we actually had like a very, very, very steady influx of people coming in because people in Toronto understood what this restaurant was, and people from Collingwood, they like slowly figured it out and they slowly came in. But yeah, I think everyone in Toronto knew about us before anyone in Collingwood even knew about us, which was wild. It was wild. It was a wild time. It was crazy. Yeah.
I came up from Toronto too, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
But to that point, why did you chose to open a place in Collingwood as opposed to, like you said,
Yeah,
Toronto, big city?
So I had always had this dream because I was living in when I was working in Italy. I was in a little town of like 25 people population. And there was a Michelin restaurant there called Antica Forte Pallavicina. It's a 1-star Michelin, and it was like all like really focused on everything that you had around the farm. So we had our own guinea fowl, our own chickens, ducks, quail, like you name it, pigs, like the whole everything. And in order to do a restaurant like that, you couldn't do that in Toronto. Like that just never really kind of clicked with me. And I was like, well, could we do it in Collingwood, where we're from? The farm's not very far away. And yeah, in Italy, we had this like beautiful setup where you would just like in the morning you'd pick some carrots and whatever you needed for the day, which was like surprisingly calming because of how crazy life is in the kitchen. You have like 10 minutes where you don't have 10 minutes, but you have to like make up 10 minutes and go to the farm and get what you need. And that for me was like kind of grew up like that on my grandparents' farm, so it was something that I always wanted to go and do again. And we were like, maybe in Ontario we could do that, and maybe people would come, and people came, and we got to do exactly what we wanted to do. It was amazing. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
And to your point, because the location, you're able to work with a lot of local producers.
Sure, yeah.
A lot of close relationships.
Yeah.
What makes that, relationship special for the restaurant? And how do you sort of manage your relationship with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Toronto you can definitely do this restaurant for sure. Because I mean even in Toronto I'm sure there's like even more farmers that go to the city and you can get whatever you need, but just the feeling of it is different. You don't drive by farms every day. You don't see wild asparagus on the side of the road. You don't see daylilies growing in the ditch, and you don't see it. Like, you don't see what's going on around you. And so you get to like create dishes based off of like what you're experiencing. And for me, that's just, it really is the best. And I think any chef would feel the same way. It's like when you see food, you get inspired, and really to what you're saying is like having farmers too, like they come into the restaurant, and they're like, hey, I got some milk. Absolutely. Like, that's great, and so someone might be like a goat farmer or like a lamb farmer or beef farmer, and just to be able to have them be like so connected to this idea it makes a huge difference in how we cook, I think. Yeah. And like even the numbers that we do, like we do like 20 to 30 people every night, and we could easily do more than that, but we physically can't based off of what we can get, so yeah.
You've obviously, like you said, you worked with Cassie, your wife, for over 20 years now. She's I don't know. She's probably off for now. This was the
Yeah,
general
for a
manager.
little bit, yeah.
Since you guys have a kid, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So you guys met during Montreal and worked together. So how did you manage to work together for all these times? And I know a lot of times it's a challenging environment.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't always work together in every restaurant, that's for sure. But I mean, especially working in the restaurant industry, it's definitely tough on the relationship, especially if you have alternate hours. But we're also like best friends, so it's really, we always find time for each other, and like anytime anyone has a day off, we make sure that the other person does too. And right now, like with having the baby at home, just kind of growing the family, it's definitely tough on both of us because we're both experiencing things differently. And for Cassie, like she was with us, she was here for like 5 years, and now she's kind of in the back end and taking care of a lot of the bookkeeping, which is definitely what we needed also, because not having that was pretty wild. But yeah, it's just making time for each other is probably the most important thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then how did you, in terms of the service, how did you work with the team, front of the house, back of the house? How did
Right
you work
now?
together? Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, both are almost the same thing. The front of house, all that they do differently is they take care of the washrooms and pouring water and wine and stuff. But for us, like the kitchen also explains dishes. The kitchen also clears. The kitchen also like drops dishes as well. And that way, like we have the most interaction with like our part, which is food. So when we're going to the table, we can answer questions that are a little bit more difficult for someone else who doesn't necessarily know what something is. For all of the staff, though, we're like every day we have several meetings where we're letting everybody know about any changes that are going on, even if it's like a little flour on a garnish. Those things change through the week, every day. So we have to like be on top, organizing what everybody knows is going on. But we try and make it as like a really great work environment so that everyone feels comfortable. If there is an issue, they can come to me and voice their opinion on something, which I think is pretty important. Some people, and I think too, like people ask questions so they can understand something, and I always want people to ask questions so they can understand what it is that we're doing or why we're not doing something a certain way, because there is always like many reasons why something is done beforehand, right? Yeah.
Nice. Talking about you guys been here open for 5+ years.
Mm-hmm.
Always been rising in the culinary world.
Yeah, it's been pretty great.
Being a Canada's 100 best to this year, right? You won the
Yeah.
Michelin star, 1 star.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great achievement. Congrats again.
Thank you.
What was the reason you see behind the success of the Pine? Winning awards and all these accolades, do they change
Right.
certain things for you guys?
Great question, because a lot of people come in and they're asked like, how do you get a Michelin star? Like, do you apply for it? And for me, it's funny because it's like nobody really knows how it works. I barely know how it works. All I know is that we just make the best food that we can, and every accolade that we get to be ourselves a little bit more, which is kind of like you would want to come right out of the gate and be like, just do whatever it is that you do, however you think that you should do it. But a lot of the time we're like kind of reserved, in what we do. We kind of like.
Do you think it's a general restaurant thing, or is it just more so for you guys?
I think specifically for us, maybe. I can't speak to other restaurants because I don't know how they operate. I don't mean necessarily like a dish itself, like doing a dish that's complicated to make. putting that on the menu is like a nerve-wracking thing, and there's like obviously price points that are involved. Like a dish that has 50,000 garnishes on it is essentially costs you more than just putting a little bit of caviar on top because of the labor that's involved. So for us though, we don't make decisions based on that. It's kind of based on like, what is the guest willing to come here and do? And that's really what we're interested in. I'm not really interested in finding, the best lobster from Nova Scotia and just kind of doing. I'm kind of more interested in how far we can push someone. And like, because for me, the experience as a whole is the most important thing, instead of just like I said before, balancing one dish. It's just, how can we make this experience the most enjoyable possible? Now we're kind of bringing people into the garden, which is where we are now, and kind of seeing like how things are cooked and everything. But that's like an evolution of us being able to do that. Like every accolade brings more to us, which is ultimately what we need. Yeah, is more. Yeah.
So related to that, what can someone comes to the Pine first time?
What can they expect?
What they expect, yeah.
So, I think with the Pine, like, I don't want you to expect anything. I want you to be completely open-minded and experience like the entire restaurant without any judgment of like what they're expecting is what I don't want. I want them to not expect anything, for sure, because without that like element of surprise, then we have no tricks up our sleeves, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to like make sure that everything we're doing, nobody knows what's going on ever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is just mystery.
Yeah, mystery is what to expect.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And then last question. Thanks again, Chef.
Sure.
Also for being with us. Any exciting things planning in the future?
Right now, no. But we're always trying to figure stuff out and try and get bigger and better. And yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
That's it.
Epic.